Hamatakiape Buju. My name is Sean Sherman. We're here at Indigenous Food Lab and we're going to go through a little recipe today. So I wanted to do something special because right now it's spring in Minnesota and we have a lot of amazing things starting to pop out of the forests, and I wanted to be able to do a dish that kind of highlighted a lot of those pieces. So we have things like beautiful wild nettles, which you have to be very careful with. You want to make sure you use gloves when you're foraging these, but these things are just really highly nutritious and really beautiful and wonderful to eat. We have some garlic that's kind of young, but where there's a lot of wild garlic that's out there, and I feel like it's kind of an invasive piece, but I think we should just try to eat as much as we can. But I'm going to utilize this garlic for this recipe. We have these beautiful fiddlehead ferns. These guys only are out for not very long, just a few weeks, because these things are just going to unfurl and fill the forest floors with all those beautiful ferns eventually. These are the ostrich ferns. And then I also have some beautiful mushrooms that are locally grown. These are oysters. There's going to be morels popping out very soon, but it's not quite there yet. But if you had morels, I'd definitely be using them for this recipe. We have some fresh asparagus. Asparagus is just popping up all over the place too, and we're going to want to do something fun with that. So I got some nice, beautiful asparagus, and we're just going to make some fun stuff with things out of the Indigenous Food Lab. So we have things like the maple sugar right here. We've got this beautiful olive oil we're going to be using, the native producer from Seca Hills. We have Ramona Farms, and we're going to be using some Tepary beans. I'm actually going to use some the brown ones on this recipe. So I'm just going to get started because this is a fairly simple recipe. There's just a lot of components to it. And the first thing I want to do is just basically get a few of these tostadas going. So these are some of the tortillas that we make here at Indigenous Food Lab. These are made with native corn, and we just spend a lot of time creating the nixtamal, turning that into masa, and then turning that masa into these beautiful tortillas. And tostadas are just a pretty simple thing because you can do them with tortillas that are getting a little bit older if you want to, but basically just get some oil kind of on a medium heat and just, drop it in there and just kind of test it out a little bit. I started this oil a little bit early, so this is already kind of working. And we just want to see that little bit of bubble in the oil. You don't want it to be smoking because that'll be too hot, so it's just a nice balance of finding that temperature. And I'm using a little bit of sunflower oil and a little bit of the Seca Hills olive oil in this right now. And we don't have to fry it very hard, we just want it to get a little bit crispy. And you can see how it's starting to puff out a little bit. We want that because it's going to add just a lot of nice airy crispiness to this whole thing. And then we're just going to flip it once, let that fry for a little bit. And really you don't need much. I mean, if you have your oil at the right temperature, it's probably maybe 40 seconds per side, if even, and you just kind of, guesstimate it to what you want, but we just want a crispy tortilla that's got still some chew to it, but not too much. All right, and then that's what you get is just one beautiful, nice, crispy tortilla. Kind of let some of the oil drip off, and then have a plate and a towel to kind of set them aside. And I'm gonna do just a couple more of these. I think it's fun to be able to just come up with real easy recipes that we can do at home and stuff that we can find in Minnesota and around us. And of course, these pieces grow in a pretty large swath across North America. And so it's just fun to think about seasonality. And I love springtime here because we have these very distinct seasons where we just passed maple season and now the forest is waking up, all the trees have buds, and the ground floor is starting to turn green, and we're starting to see all of these wonderful pieces. And so I think it's just fun to challenge yourself to get outside, go on a hike, walk around, and learn how to identify these plants and learn how to sustainably harvest things. Especially ramps are good examples because people like to pull up all the ramps because they're easy to identify. But if you pull the ramps out of the ground, there's nothing left to grow. So for us, we just like to take the tops out of most of them and leave most of the bulbs in the ground. And it's fine to take a few bulbs, but we probably take like maybe one out of every 20 and leave the rest in the ground. So because you want those ramps to continue to propagate and to grow. And they're tricky plants because they don't seed for quite a few years, 6 to 7 years. And it's really hard for them to continue to grow. And especially if you just pull them out of the ground, then there's nothing left there. And so it's important to learn about how you sustainably harvest. It's important to understand what the local rules are around you, and just take care of the earth. That's the best part. So one more piece I'm going to do because this is my recipe and I'm just making this up. is I want a little spice to this. So I'm gonna fry off some chilies and get them nice and dark. And so I already have this oil, and I'm just gonna use the same oil. And I'm just gonna take a little handful of these arbol chilies, and I'm just gonna sprinkle it in this oil. I'm just gonna fry these up. You're gonna see these chilies kind of wake up and poof out a little bit, and I wanna get some color on them. And it's gonna be pretty strong, so be careful if you're doing this in your house, because it will make you cough. It gets pretty intense, but there's gonna be a really beautiful toasty flavor to these, and it's gonna be completely worth it. Leave out the chilies if you don't want them, or chop them up and leave them on the side if somebody wants to sprinkle them on there. But it's fun to get these chilies nice and dark, almost burnt even, because they just add this layer of toastiness that you're really gonna want. All right, these look pretty good, so I'm just going to pull these off before they're too dark. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is chop up some of this garlic. I just want to clean these up just a little bit, but it's just going to be a nice quick chop. You don't need to do much because we're just going to saute this all out. And of course, you could just use regular garlic bulbs if you just want a little garlic flavor. It's just that I think the green gives it a little bit more spring flavor. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit of oil to the pan. And then I'm gonna add all of this garlic. And then we're gonna put some nettles in there and saute those up real quick. Playing with nettles can be tricky. Nettles are just really cool. And once you pull these leaves off of these stems, all you gotta do is blanch them really quick or just cook them. So I'm gonna skip the blanching step and just pop them right into the oil in a moment and just saute them up. But again, you do wanna be careful because this will make your skin itchy. These are stinging nettles. And they are all over the place. They're so easy to identify. In the springtime, they just kind of grow everywhere, and they last for quite a while, even into midsummer. But they start to get a little bit more chewy later in the season, so they're best in the spring when they're really tender. And again, you're just gonna get so many amazing vitamins out of these. I mean, and so like nettles don't really have too much of a very specific flavor, because it does taste like a lot of other greens if you cook them down. You know, people can contribute it to things like spinach and stuff like that, but I think it's better than spinach. You know, it just adds a lot of nutrients to whatever you're cooking with. It's great for soups because you can just throw the leaves right in your soup and it'll just go in there and add a bunch of vitamins to what you're making. And they're just, you know, they're really wonderful. And so for me, it's just a matter of utilizing all of this spring vegetable that you can find outside to make a really healthy dinner or lunch or whatever you want, just a healthy meal. And it's really just easy, and people shouldn't be afraid of these things. But again, like, you do want to have some education about it. You do want to learn about it before you start just going out there and grabbing things. You do need to know where you can harvest these legally, and you also need to identify sometimes where people spray chemicals, because there's telltale signs, and it's worth reading on the internet about some of those pieces, because there's plenty of information out there of where and not to harvest when you're out there in the wild. But you know, for us in Minneapolis and Minnesota, it's just so great to get outside in the springtime, because we're stuck indoors for too long, because we really have such a wonderful growing season. And then the winter comes along and it just feels like we're indoors for months and months on end. And so when the temperature finally starts to change and the trees start to wake up and the forest starts to wake up, it's really the best time to be out there. All right, so I got these all cleaned up, and I'm just gonna throw these right into this saute pan with this garlic we've been toasting. Turn up this heat just a little bit, and we just wanna saute this down. I'm gonna add a pinch of salt and a pinch of maple sugar, just to give it a little bit of extra seasoning. And this maple sugar, you can find some in our markets. If you go online, you can find these bags. So yeah, feel free to find it. It's a wonderful thing you can make at home. We should do another video showing everybody how to make maple sugar at home using maple syrup. And we just want to saute this just a little bit so it starts to get nice and green like that. And it's just really simple. And you can really smell that aroma of the garlic and a little bit of that maple in there. And I'm just gonna mix in some of the beans that we have. These are Tepary beans. They were soaked overnight and pre-cooked. And these Tepary beans, they really hold their texture so well. And that's what makes them really special. And we're just gonna make a little base for our tostadas with these few pieces right here. And again, we don't need to overcook anything. We just need to get everything up to temperature. Like I said, the beans are already cooked. These greens are really tender, so we don't need to overcook anything at all. And just look how beautiful that looks. And again, just a huge source of protein and just a really cool product because these are drought resistant. I just really feel like Tepary beans have such an important role for us as we kind of move into a lot of water crisis in different parts of the United States. And I just think it'll be a really important crop to consider. I'm just gonna pull these off to the side for now. And that's almost a beautiful side dish just by itself. But you know, this is just gonna be one of the components of our tostadas, but just look how beautiful that is. And next, we're just gonna do a little saute of some of these spring vegetables. I'm gonna set this aside. I'm gonna cut up some of the asparagus, and I'm gonna cut this into a long bias, meaning just it's gonna be on a long diagonal. You're gonna just go slow. You don't have to go for speed on these, but you just want really nice, beautiful, long slices, just like that. So when we're doing this bias cut, just be really careful. Keep your thumb and your fingers away from the blade, and just go really long, probably at a really thin angle. I'm saying this is probably like 15 degrees or something, and just kind of try to cut so it's just a nice long, and again, just go really slow and just rock your blade so you're letting your blade do the cutting action. You just want it to kind of slide through. You're not ever pushing straight down. You're using the blade to kind of saw through it. But just take your time, and you can even pull it towards you if you want to, carefully if you push it against your fingers. You know, after a lot of practice, you can move faster, but again, you always want to be careful because accidents happen. So if you're in the kitchen, you're eventually going to get cut or burned. That's just the result of playing with knives and fire all day. All right, so we got all these cut, and we don't really have to do much to the fiddleheads, just kind of pick through them. You can cut off some of the tips if you need to. You can discard some if they look a little too straggly, but they're really pretty simple to deal with. And you do want to cook these just a little bit. If you ate too many of these raw, they would probably upset your stomach, so it's better to cook them down. And plus, it's just, you know, more hygienic in general. And when you're harvesting fiddleheads, you want to hit it really early in the spring when the forest floor is just barely waking up. So in Minnesota, you'll mostly see ramps coming up, you'll see wild ginger popping up, you'll see fiddleheads starting to pop up, and you want to get them when they're really tightly grouped like this, when it's really, really tight, where it literally looks like the head of a fiddle. Because once they start to unfurl, they get a lot more chewy, and they just get really kind of woody after a bit, really quickly. And then they just grow out so big after that, so they really move so quickly. But they're really wonderful when you can just find a big patch of them because, you know, they do kind of taste asparagus. And we do have a video of foraging fiddleheads from last year on our YouTube channel, so feel free to dig around and look that up. And then for the mushrooms, these ones are pretty easy. If I had morels, which should be out momentarily, I would be using those. But these are really clean. I don't have to do much to them. I'm just going to give them a really light, rough chop. I want to be able to hold some form and shape to these things, just because they'll look really pretty when you saute them up. And so I just got 2 big pieces here. All right, so now we're going to add some more oil. Make sure the pan is medium-ish warm. It's already good. You can see the oil swirling. It's a little hot. I'm just going to pull it for a second. All right, I'm going to add a bunch of the asparagus. Hear that nice sizzle. And throw the mushrooms on top. I'll throw a big handful of these fiddleheads in there. Add a little bit of salt, a little bit of maple sugar again. And we're just going to saute this up. And this really is a taste of spring here, and it would be even more so if I had some of the ramps and some of the morels, but overall, this is just, sauteing the Minnesota forest floor and forest with the mushrooms. You just want to move these around. We want to make sure we get these mushrooms nice and cooked. I'm going to add just a little bit more maple sugar to finish this. So I want it to have a little bit of sweetness that'll really help it kind of pop. And that's pretty much it. And then the last thing I'm going to do is take some of the chilies we toasted off earlier and just give them a little bit of a light chop. I just want to break them up into kind of bite-sized pieces, a little bit smaller than that. I want them to have a little bit of texture because they have this wonderful crunch. And again, like if you don't like chili or spice, then don't use these, but to me, these things will really help make it. All right, so let's just build a tostada. I'm gonna take one of the tostadas that we did earlier. Just gonna set that in the center. I'm gonna grab some of the beans with the garlic and the nettles. I'm gonna put that on top of there. And that really could be its own, but again, like we're going a little bit deeper than that. We want to sprinkle some of these on here. And I want to sprinkle with a little bit of chili. And I'm also going to add just a little bit of sauce. This is some wozapi that we make here, and this is made out of aronia berry. So this is just basically frozen aronia berries, maple, and water, and we just cook it down a little bit and blend it up. And so it's just a really, really simple berry sauce. It's kind of loose, but it's just going to add a little bit of sweetness and a little bit of earthiness to it, and it'll just kind of really help this. And that's pretty much all we need. It's really good. The chilies will get you, but I like the chilies, so I'm glad that I put those on there. But again, like if you don't want the chilies, don't put them on. It's all good. But obviously, like these tortillas just make such great tostadas. They're just so much better than the store-bought corn tortillas. And you can find a few different, handmade, true corn nixtamal tortillas like this out there. But we're really proud of these tortillas, and so there's just so many fun things that we do with them constantly. And a tostada is just something that's really fun, something that's really easy. But I feel like this dish just really does what it wanted to do, was just highlight a lot of these spring vegetables and showcase a lot of the tenderness of these vegetables. And for me, that little bit of heat just kind of really popped it through. So I would say that for something I just made up, I think it's pretty good. Wopi latanka for watching. You can find more of our videos on our YouTube channel, so just go to natifs.org and just dig around and find our YouTube, and just look us up at Indigenous Food Lab. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you again.